Hello, and welcome to The Modern Lady, where you'll learn how to elevate your life with elegance. I'm Devereaux. If you're new to my channel, please hit that red subscribe button so that you can get an update when I've got a new video to share. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you, ladies, so much for your continued love and support for my channel. I appreciate and adore you all. Today's video is an interview in a series called Pearls of Wisdom, where I shine a spotlight on elegant women that believe in the power of style and sophistication. Today's interview guest is Julia Boyd, a certified etiquette consultant at The Etiquette Consultant, and I'm so excited she is here with us today. Julia, welcome to The Modern Lady.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome, and we're excited to hear your story and really get into this topic today on afternoon tea etiquette. So, first, let's just get started. Julia, can you share with us the story behind your business, The Etiquette Consultant, and how everything came to be what it is today?
Yes, well, I used to teach in a finishing school. I was trained in etiquette by a woman called Madame Nery, and she owns the oldest finishing school that exists today in the world in Switzerland. So I started working there, and she taught me everything, almost everything I know about etiquette. And I had to leave because my husband was traveling abroad for a new position with his work. I followed him and I couldn't work. So I continued to study. I learned a lot about protocol. I studied at the Protocol School of Washington. I was trained by the deputy chief of protocol for the Pentagon. And when I met people, I was living in Manhattan, and afterwards I moved to Mexico. And when I met people, they would ask me about my history, about my career, and I started to give workshops and trainings in etiquette and protocol, and it snowballed from there. I'm back now based in Switzerland, but I give trainings in Switzerland, in London quite often, and throughout Europe also, occasionally in Asia. So I do a lot of work with etiquette, with corporate etiquette, with protocol, with VIP events also, and also afternoon tea.
I love it. And that is so exciting. I can only imagine how much fun it is for you to travel to all of these different places when you're visiting your clients. And so that's really incredible. So, Julia, we're going to talk about afternoon tea, and I'm so excited to hear your wisdom and your insight on this. So, first, what are three things that we should never do during afternoon tea?
Well, the three things that come to the top of my head would be when you have your sandwiches, you shouldn't use a knife and fork. I was very recently in a lovely tea salon in London, and there was a couple sitting next to me. I was so desperate to tell them that they shouldn't be using their knife and fork to eat their finger sandwiches. They're called finger sandwiches for a reason. They're meant to be small and dainty, and sandwiches that you would just eat in one or two mouthfuls. So they can be rectangular, they can be triangle shaped, or they could be squares, which apparently is how they serve them in the royal households, where the queen serves them in squares. But the idea is that you don't need cutlery because it's an afternoon snack. There shouldn't be the need for any knives and forks. So that would be the first thing. The second would be your scones. And many people think that you cut them open with a knife, but actually a scone is a type of bread, and bread should only ever be broken with your hands. So a really perfectly prepared scone, you should be able to hold it with both hands and almost twist and open, and it should just break apart perfectly into two pieces. So that would be, I think, the second thing. So no knives to cut your scones at all. And a third one, milk. Traditionally, we should pour our milk in after the tea. Historically, the reason was that the staff that would be working in a private household would not have fine china. And if they poured scalding hot water into their mugs or their cups, they would break. So they would always pour the milk first, whereas up the stairs the tea would be first and the milk would be poured after. But also, judging on the strength of the tea, you would be able to look at the tea and the colour, and that would give you an indication of how much milk you actually wanted to add to your tea, so you wouldn't be too milky. So I would say that's my the three main things that you should not do during afternoon tea.
I love that, Julie, and I think that's so important. One thing that you touched on was you noticed someone else doing something incorrectly and you wanted to say something. That is one of the, I think, most difficult things for those of us that do know proper etiquette and proper protocol. It is never proper to correct someone, to tell them, unless you're in a seminar and you're teaching, but to just let someone know, even if you're dining with friends, oh, you shouldn't do that, or hey girl, or whatever we call our friends. Sometimes that can be the most difficult thing, to just hold that feedback in. But yes,
keep quiet.
yes, absolutely. And we never want to overuse our cutlery. So the fork and knife is not going to be involved with a finger sandwich or with a scone. I love that. So let's talk about what to wear. So Julia, let's see. What would your take be on the perfect afternoon tea attire?
Well, it really depends on actually where you have your afternoon tea. So afternoon tea is something that's so quintessentially British that it's actually, you can go to a tiny little tea room in the countryside, or you can go to Claridge's, you can go to the Goring, the Savoy, the Ritz. So it depends on where you're actually going to be. And if you were going to go somewhere like the Goring or the Savoy, then you would obviously make an effort with your appearance, because it's a relatively formal affair. It's not the most formal dress code, but you would go with, making an effort to sort of, be dressed in a way that's appropriate for the surroundings. So if you're going somewhere really lovely, a beautiful hotel, and you're going to be surrounded by fine silver and china, and the clientele there are also going to be very well dressed, then you would dress accordingly. And it would mean ideally you wouldn't wear jeans, and you wouldn't wear, sneakers, trainers, or anything too informal, but you wouldn't have to wear a cocktail dress, for example. But you could wear a nice dress. A lady could wear something very elegant, some nice heels, and as long as she looked groomed and well dressed, then I would just recommend avoiding denims, anything too informal.
Sure. So we don't want to look too casual. We don't want to look like we're maybe going to the park later to sit and play with children on the swing set.
Exactly. I remember the first time I ever had afternoon tea, well, I was in my early 20s, and it was my first time that I had ever left the UK, and I was visiting some family, and they took me to the Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia. And I was astounded to walk in and see all the ladies wearing their hats. And it was amazing. So in some amazing hotels in some countries, there will be people who will be wearing their hats for afternoon tea, and they will really be very, very elegantly dressed for the affair. But it was quite, made quite an impression on me, I remember.
Yes. So for a lot of ladies that enjoy dressing up and enjoy getting fancy and feeling feminine, afternoon tea is really the perfect occasion to do that.
Yes.
So, Julia, British tea, as you mentioned, is a really popular tradition, and it's definitely one that's known around the world. Can you share with us what inspired this amazing tradition?
This was a tradition that was started by a lady called the Duchess of Bedford, and it was approximately in the 1840s. And at that time, historically, breakfast was taken very early, lunch was taken quite early, and the evening meal was taken a little bit later. And she was a woman who found herself hungry in the middle of the afternoon. So she asked that she could be served in her bedroom something light to keep her going. I think originally it was tea, some bread and jam, and I think some cake. And she really enjoyed it. And this was a regular occurrence for her. And I think she started to invite some friends, and then friends would get dressed up. And she used to take it in her bedroom, but she moved it into her sitting room. And it became a slightly more formal event where her friends would come and they would all enjoy afternoon tea together. It became a little bit more elaborate. So that's the history behind it. And if you have, if you go to a very nice hotel, you will have the scones and the sandwiches on a 3-tiered plate. You wouldn't have traditionally had this in a private household. It would just have been plates. It would have been, everything would have been ready beforehand and prepared. And the Duchess, as the hostess, would have been the person that would have been pouring the tea for all her guests and offering all the sandwiches and everything in that way. So it was something that just became a little bit more and more glamorous and a little bit more exciting. Not to be confused with high tea, where the lower working classes would, around about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd have been working very, very hard all day since early morning, and they would come home and they would have their evening dinner, or high tea it was called, and it would be steak pies, and it would be much heavier and heartier, quite often with a mug of tea alongside. But it would be served at a high dining table, whereas the afternoon tea, the Duchess of Bedford style, would be served on a low coffee table. Everybody would be sitting in comfortable chairs, and it would be low tables. So that would be the difference, and that's how it all started. The tradition that we enjoy today.
I love it. And I'm so glad, Julia, that you touched on the difference between high tea and afternoon tea. Pop culture, it's one of the many things in this world of etiquette and elegance, I would call it, that pop culture and the media is getting incorrectly. So a lot of people are calling afternoon tea, but they're serving high tea, and it always really bothers me.
I know, but it's interesting because you see it in England. I was in Cambridge just last week, and I saw somewhere advertising high tea, and it was saying fruit scones, plain scones, and I don't understand why.
I don't know. I think that a lot of people don't understand the history and the terminology, and so they're just automatically going to associate high tea as being the glamorous version of tea
Yeah.
when they hear high tea and low tea. So they're like, "Oh, let's host a high tea." They think it's going to be so much more posh and refined, but if you really understand
Yes.
etiquette and the history behind it, that's actually not the case. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So, Julia, what is your favorite treat to serve tea when you're hosting an afternoon tea?
Well, I don't host afternoon tea very often, but when I do, it has to be cucumber sandwiches. Because not everywhere serves cucumber sandwiches anymore, because many of these lovely hotels, they have fantastic sandwiches. The choices are amazing, but not all of them have the traditional ones. So cucumber sandwiches have to be my favorite. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was actually preparing a pile of cucumber sandwiches for a picnic that we were going on, and my son came down the stairs and he saw them and he said, "Oh, wonderful, we're having afternoon tea." And I said, "No, we're not." So that's my favorite. I think you can mix up and have little different cakes. You always have scones, obviously with cream and jam, but I definitely like to have cucumber sandwiches, one of the traditionals.
Always a classic. I love it. Yes, you really can't go wrong with just some of those basics. So,
I agree. Mm.
Julia, who is your favorite elegant role model and why?
Oh, who is my favorite elegant role model? I really like the. I kind of am drawn towards the British royal family, and I really love the duchesses. I think all of the duchesses are very elegant, very refined, and they're all very different. And I like their dress styles. I like the way they behave. I like their posture. I like, yeah. If I could be any duchess currently in the UK, I think I would be anyone. I don't want to sort of say a preference.
Yes, the royal family is truly iconic, and they do display so much poise and so much grace that
Exactly.
it's really hard not to be inspired by them. So they're absolutely incredible, and there's some amazing role models.
Yeah, I think we ignore all the criticism that we hear about them now, and yes, they're all very elegant and all very, they are role models. They're very inspiring, I think, the work that they do, and they manage to remain dignified at the same time.
Yes, and they're definitely under an incredible amount of
Mhm.
pressure.
I
If we
know.
think about the paparazzi and, like you're talking about, Julia, the criticism and the press and the media, it's
Mm.
what they do is not easy, and it is a job. It's a
Yeah,
job and it's an obligation, and they do give so much of themselves. It's really a selfless role that they're in. And so I think the amount of dignity and grace that they carry with this role is really incredible to watch because it is not easy.
I
It
know.
looks
I know.
glamorous, but it cannot be easy every day, for
I
sure.
know. I know.
So, Julia, as we wrap up this interview today, I want to ask you one last question. What is one piece of timeless advice, or as I like to call it, one pearl of wisdom that you live by each and every day?
Well, I live by, I suppose you could say too, I try to laugh every day. I think you have to laugh at life and laugh at mistakes that you make, and just you have to be happy. But I would say that you have to be the best version of you that you can be. So it doesn't matter your career, it doesn't matter your income, it doesn't matter, yeah, what you're doing, where you're going, but try to always be the best that you can be, whether it's dressing in the best way that you can for the occasion, or conversing in the best way that you can for a certain occasion, eating in the best way that you can for the occasion. I think you just have to try and be the best that you can be every day.
I love that. And I think the consistency, Julia, is really important, which is why a lot of women are looking for resources and just pouring into investing in themselves because if you're able to be the best version of yourself a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month or in certain situations or social circles, then you can certainly apply that to everything, to your entire lifestyle. But it's not easy. And so I love your pearl of wisdom, Julia. Thank you for sharing.
Good. Thank you.
Well, Julia, where are the best places for people to find you online?
Well, they can go straight to my website. It's the etiquetteconsultant.com. And I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Perfect. So, ladies, I've got all of the links to Julia's website and social platforms in the description below. Click below to make sure you follow her and you check out her website. She's got some amazing resources for you, and you're sure to be inspired by everything she shares online. Well, Julia, thank you so much for joining in on this interview. It was such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure to talk about one of my favourite subjects, afternoon tea.
You're welcome. Ladies, as we're wrapping up this interview today, I'd love to know from you. Share a comment below. What is your favorite treat to enjoy with your afternoon tea whenever you are maybe hosting a party, or if you're just having a party of one and enjoying afternoon tea at home? What is your favorite treat that you are enjoying with a cup of tea? And feel free to share in a comment below. We will keep the conversation going. Ladies, as always, thank you for tuning into this interview. If you enjoyed it, if you got some inspiration and some value added to your life, some elegant inspiration, please give it a thumbs up to share some YouTube love and share it with a friend who may also be interested in learning more about proper afternoon tea etiquette. I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Bye for now.